Hey there Wargamers and X-Wing pilots, Justin here from AMP Services with this week's X-Wing Wednesday video. In this video we're going to be discussing one of the Rebel Y-Wings, specifically Horton Salm. I think he's underrated, underutilized, and he's a lot more effective than people might actually realize he is. Today we're going to be discussing him, and without further ado, let's get right in and talk about his pilot card. So right up front, Horton Salm comes in at 25 squad points. He's got an 8 pilot skill, which is, it's acceptable, we'll have to deal with it. And he's got a standard stat line for any other Y-Wing. Can you spot the glaring weakness or problem on his card though? I'll show you. Down here at the bottom, he does not have an elite pilot talent. That's somewhat of a hamstring on him, but we'll discuss later in the video how you might be able to get around that if you choose to. For now though, we're going to focus on the primary benefit of Horton Salm, and that's his pilot ability. His pilot ability reads, when attacking at range 2 to 3, you may reroll any of your blank results. This is fantastic for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, it's almost a target lock in and of itself. And when you're usually limited to only one action a turn, this makes the action for Horton very simple. You're almost always going to take that focus action. Because you always get to reroll, there's almost no reason to take a target lock. We will be discussing later in the video as well one option for the target lock that you might choose to do depending on how you go with your build. And before we get there though, we're going to discuss how to increase the effectiveness of Horton on one of your squads by what turret option you select. If you're a veteran player, or if you happen to see the beginning of the video what was laying before us, you're probably going to guess what's coming. And if you're a veteran player, I bet you guessed this. No surprise, twin laser turret. Now I know you veterans are already familiar with this, but we're going to discuss it anyway, just in case there's anybody new tuning in. The twin laser turret comes in at 6 points, which seems like a hefty price tag, but trust me, it's worth it. It offers a 3 attack dice attack at range 2 to 3. Its ability states, attack, performance attack twice. Twice! Even against a ship outside your firing arc. This is fantastic. The Y-Wing's pretty maneuverable, but it's not an A-Wing or an interceptor. It's not going to be trying to keep somebody in its front arc. It's not as good. It's not an arc dodger. It's not something like that. So being able to focus on not bumping into ships and steering clear of asteroids, all the while returning fire, is efficient. The second half of this card states, each time this attack hits, the defender suffers 1 damage, then cancel all dice results. Now while it's true that you can only ever do 2 damage a turn with the twin laser turret, the Y-Wing, most of the time, can only max out at 2 damage anyway, and it only has a 2 attack dice attack unless it's at range 1. The twin laser turret offers 3. It's an efficient way to try and get at least some damage in every turn. That's why it's so effective. Now if you noticed, its minimum range is 2, and its maximum range is 3. When shooting at range 3 with your secondary weapon, enemies don't get the benefit of the bonus dice because this is secondary. That's also something to keep in mind. But it's also worth noting, the whole reason that this is good on Horton is because this is a range 2 to 3, and Horton's pilot skill is also range 2 to 3. So while again this can only deal 1 damage per attack, maximum 2 damage a turn, when you leverage it with Horton and being able to reroll the blanks, you have really good odds of hitting with 2 to 3 of the attack dice every time you shoot with this. Add into that you're probably sitting on a focus, you're really likely to get at least 1 good solid set of hits with this unless you're just having an off day. So let's move on to some of the other upgrades that you can use in conjunction with the twin laser turret and Horton and see what we can come up with. Alright, so first of all, the go-to astromech for most Y-Wings for the Rebels is the R2 astromech. He comes in at 1 point and his ability reads, you may treat all 1 and 2 speed maneuvers as green maneuvers. This is really good, but I also play Scum and it's not quite, in my opinion, as good as the unhinged astromech for Scum. The unhinged astromech turns all of the speed 3 maneuvers for the Y-Wing into greens, so that actually takes some of the ones that are red and makes them a lot less damaging to you when you have to use them. This one, however, emphasizes your slower speeds, so you can't quite get the same effectiveness out of it. It's not as easy to use 3 maneuvers, or speed 3 maneuvers to get away, but it's not a bad choice. It's still pretty good. If you choose not to go with the R2 astromech, however, there is another option, and it's something that I think is a unique combo specifically designed probably for Horton himself, and that's the R7 astromech. This one comes in at 2 points and it reads, Once per round, when defending, if you have a target lock on the attacker, you may spend the target lock to choose any or all attack dice. The attacker must re-roll the chosen dice. Because Horton Salm's not really going to be using his target locks anyway, early on in the game, you may be driving forward and actually throw a target lock on someone that you have no intentions of shooting at that particular moment, just because you're worried that they may shoot at you. You can leverage your twin laser turret with rerolls against another target and save that target lock, maybe you've put it on like a Vader or a Sunterfell or Whisper, for when they shoot at you, so that you can try and decrease their chance of hitting. Now keep in mind, if the attacker is not sitting on a focus token, their odds of hitting with each red dice is 50-50. So making them re-roll it puts odds in your favor that they may roll out of the hit and into a miss, which is really good. Not good for maneuverability, and not necessarily an offensive card, but a great defensive card to make use of that action that you're not really going to be using on Horton to begin with. The second option, or the third option rather, that you might be able to use on Horton is R2D6. Now, he comes in at 1 point, and he reads, your upgrade bar gains the Elite Pilot upgrade icon. Now, this is particularly effective if you're not necessarily worried about maneuverability, and you're not worried about using this to survive. You only have one defense dice, so the R7 Astromech's not necessarily 100% effective. If you're able to keep yourself at range 3 and the enemy's not using secondary weapons, the R7 Astromech may be useful for you. But if you're really worried about going up against somebody who's got higher pilot skill than you, maybe you're worried about having to fight a Whisper who's got a 9 innately and you want to shoot her before she decloaks, taking the R2D6 Astromech is really useful. Because it opens up your bar and adds you an Elite Pilot talent, it gives you access to these two upgrades, in my opinion, that would be the most effective to choose from. So let's start with the first one. By using R2D6 and the Elite Pilot slot that it unlocks for you, you could bring in Veteran Instincts. Veteran Instincts comes in at 1 point and it reads, increase your pilot skill value by 2. This is incredibly effective. It's going to give Horton Salm a 10 pilot skill. He's not going to be shooting before Vader, but he'll get to shoot before the likes of Sunterfell and Whisper. Being able to shoot Whisper before she has the opportunity to fire is fantastic. A twin laser turret comes with 3 attack dice innately. Whisper only has 2 evade when she's not cloaked. So being able to leverage those 3 attack dice against her with Horton's rerolls to get at least some damage in is incredibly brutal. Even if it is only maxing out at 2 damage total for the turn, that's still half of a Whisper's life. If they don't take you out in the subsequent turn, you have really good odds of taking her out. Now, let's say you're one of those players that's hyper competitive and you're worried about coming in at less than 100 points because you want an initiative bid. That's where adaptability may come in and may be effective for you. Adaptability comes in at 0 squad points, which is super efficient, and it reads, increase your pilot skill value by 1. Now, using that in conjunction with Horton Salm here is going to give him a pilot skill of a 9. Again, you're not going to be shooting the likes of Vader, who has most likely Veteran Instinct sitting at 11. But if you get the initiative bid, this is going to put you at a pilot skill 9, which is on par with Whisper. And if you get to shoot her first, the whole spiel I just went through still applies. The only difference is she's going to have simultaneous fire and get to fire before she goes down. It's still effective though, because you get to get damage in on her before she gets to get her defensive buff from making her shots. Alright, so now we've discussed Horton Salm's ability, why it's effective, and the turret that you use in conjunction with it to make him even more effective. Let's discuss what kind of build options you have with him and what point totals you're going to come in at. So, as we stated, he comes in at 25 points. He's basically always going to have a twin laser turret, so that puts him at 31 points. If you decide to run with the R2 Astromech, you want to have that maneuverability, he's going to come in at 32 points. Let's say you're not worried about the maneuverability and you want to go with the option of making somebody roll out of their hits, you can go with the R7. That's going to put you at 33 points. Let's say that you're not worried about maneuverability and you're not worried about using his target lock to try and survive, you're worried about shooting somebody absolutely first. So you might want to go with the R2D6 Astromech and Veteran Instincts, putting you at 33 points. Or, let's say you're one of those hyper-competitive guys and you're really worried about that initiative bid. Maybe you've got another guy on your team that's got a different pilot ability or pilot skill that you want to leverage. So you may use the R2D6 with the twin laser turret and adaptability. That's going to bring you in at 32 points. So in your point spread, depending on what build you may want to run with Horton Salm, you're looking at a minimum, just straight running the twin laser turret by itself, 31 points. At a maximum, you're looking at a 33 point ship, depending on what upgrades you run that are before us here. So what do you guys think? Is this something that may be useful for you, or you're a veteran player and maybe there's a glaring weakness that I've missed, or maybe you're a veteran player that hasn't seen this before? Maybe you're a new guy and this gives you some insight, or you might want to try it. Let me know below, especially if you try him out. Let me know what you went with. I'd like to get some feedback and get a discussion started. Also, as many of you guys may know, I do get paid to paint. Now while this ship right here was not painted by me, I do paint a lot of tabletop games like Warhammer 40k for example, and if you'd like to have me paint something like that for you, or even your X-Wing miniatures, please take a moment to click Quote Request now. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe, and also check us out on Facebook. You'll be able to stay up to date with all of our current promotions and our content. Finally, this has been a big endeavor, and it was a choice I decided to make that may fail, but I've decided to start my own Patreon page. If you'd like to support the channel, and I would love your support, please check that out. It's going to help me keep continuing to provide you guys with content, and you'll also get some cool swag in return. I hope you guys enjoyed, thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.